All right. Hello there. My name is Brendan Dunn. I'm going to give you a informative lesson on what you can do to help better your child who is been recently found deaf. I know it can be hard and you might not know what to do, but there's always something you can do, and there's always options for your child. You're not alone. There's always other people out there who can help you and who would love to help you and who would also love to be a part of your life and help you along. So I am actually one of those people. I'd love to be able to help you and figure out what you want to do with your life, and that's what I'm going to be helping you out with today. Also, any information that I don't cover will be left down in the link in the description, and you can find anything down there. So a few things I'm going to be covering today are going to be things like hearing devices, the language you might want to choose or the route you'll take with that, some education options, and some of the deaf culture that I can talk to you guys about so you get some more information on that. Starting out, I'm going to be talking about the hearing devices and some things that you can do. For the first thing that you can do, you have three main options that I've been researching. The three main were having a hearing aid, which are mostly used for people who are slightly less deaf and who are more slightly hearing impaired. A cochlear implants, which is usually done through surgery. Or you could just do nothing, and you could leave your child and let them be deaf, and then you have other ways of communicating with them, which I will go into further detail later. First off, so my choice was nothing because it was the most cost-effective choice over the hearing aid or the cochlear implant. For the hearing aid, you can receive a hearing aid actually at the store, or you can just buy one for probably around $100 to $200. But you can also get one prescribed by a audiologist who can tell you that hearing aid will help your child, and you can get one or two. But usually a really good one from an audiologist can cost up to $1,000 to $2,000, possibly even going into the $4,000, $5,000 range, depending on who you talk to. So that was a slightly more costly type of approach to it, but it also can help you out in the long run, but it's not going to be the best choice simply because hearing aids don't actually give you full sounds. It's more like slight noises, vibrations that they can hear very well, and it's not always the most effective choice out there. The second option was cochlear implants. I thought cochlear implants were possibly effective. However, they do still have a very robotic sound that is not very natural and may not honestly work with your child. It doesn't always work, but it does work sometimes. That usually is very costly. It can honestly cost you from $50,000 to $100,000 depending on what you do. Now, usually there's insurances out there that will cover the cost of that, so it's not going to be right out of pocket. But that's another thing I was going to go into the topic too. So for the hearing aids, you can possibly find insurances that will help you out, and that could possibly give you $500 to $1,000 benefits over a possible 3 to 5 year wait, and then you can possibly get that renewed to help you guys out again. For others, like the cochlear implant, like I already said, you can get insurances to usually cover that, and medical expenses will help you out with that. Now, for the hearing aid, you don't need any training. You don't have to have any training that goes along with that. It's usually just you get the hearing aid, and then you can adjust it to the setting that allows you to hear the best for yourself. For the cochlear implant, however, it's entirely different. Right after you get a cochlear implant implanted, you have surgery, and then after the surgery you come back in a few weeks, and then you can talk to an audiologist, and they'll tell you about what you need to do, all the training types that you have to do. Usually you have to go in for multiple sessions and get your hearing tuned, and then you listen to sounds, and you get trained to how to hear sounds with the new device that has been implanted. Now, also, the way it's implanted is also not as incredibly effective as I would think. I mean, it's effective, but it's not the most subtle way. They have to go inside and implant one piece on the inside of your ear that's connected to the cochlea in your ear, and then another piece on the outside that has the battery component, and it will connect with the piece that's inside your ear, and that's how it works. This has to go through a set of surgeries, and also it may not be the most effective device, so you're also going through the surgery for a possible not working option. Honestly, that is why I chose the nothing route, because I thought that you can still be deaf, and then you have multiple communication options that you have. And I will also go into that now. The next one would be language, and so you have a few options of language. You have ASL, which is the one I chose. You have English, the oral method, which is trying to get your child to speak and then read lips. And then you also have signed English, which is a pigeon sign, which is okay, but ASL is a little bit more formed. So I have been taking ASL, and it's been very interesting. It's actually not incredibly hard to learn. I think that's why I chose ASL, is because it's very fluid for people. You can get it, and then you just kind of learn the signs, and then you learn the structure, and then you can put things together, and then it actually works out really well, and then you're able to communicate with a good amount of deaf people. One thing though is that you now, if you choose the ASL method, you're going to have the responsibility of learning ASL yourself, which is to other people, it may be something that they just might want to do. Now, if you're willing to put in the time and the work and the effort to be able to learn ASL and help out your child and be able to communicate with your child that way, that's a really good way to be able to do that. But if you're willing to go down the oral method route, that may not be the best route that you could take, because oral method is very stressful on your child, because basically now they're sitting there and they have to watch the speaker's lips, and that's the only way they can really hear, other than maybe a few vibrations, but that's not going to be very easy for your child. So that's why I chose the ASL method, because it's the most visual method for them that they can be able to use. Also, another reason I chose ASL is it is a very widely used method of choice. It's used actually by over 2 million people in America, and it is the third leading. We are the third leading country that uses sign language. The second leading country is the Chinese at 2,022,000. So it's they're a little bit higher, and then the first being the Spanish speaking countries that are up actually into the 28 million users of ASL, or not ASL, but ESL. So there's a lot of pros, and there's a few cons to using ASL. Some of the pros were it's easier for your child, because it definitely is easier for your child. I mean, it's going to be a lot less stressful. It's just going to be them basically learning the language and then being able to talk to you with their own language. It reduces frustration. It will boost their self-esteem, and it also allows your child to feel involved in the other deaf community, because the people who are who are pro-deaf and who are very into the deaf culture usually are signing with ASL, and that's their chosen method because they feel that that's the best route for them. And if you want to get your child involved in the deaf community, that is one way, is by having them speak ASL, because one of the most known colleges is Gallaudet, which is located in DC, and they have a very good signed program. So that's another thing we'll be looking into. Some of the cons are you have to be consistent with using your signs. You have to consistently use the signs and be very you have to be very front with your child, and you have to make sure that they're looking at you. You can't just yell at them. You have to make sure that they you're very forward with them. It also takes time to learn sign. There's a lot of signs, there's a lot of words, but it is really worth it. I mean, I think it'll very much help out you and your family if you do that. Another thing is, if no one else in your family uses it, it could be tough, but also that's something that you can do. You can interpret for your child, and that's one big thing, is that why you need to take the responsibility to learn it, because if you can both learn it, then you have a lot easier way to communicate. And there's also a wide variety of signs, but honestly, once you start needing to use a sign and you look it up, you'll get it down, because you're going to want to be able to say those things. So it's going to be important to you to learn it, because how else are you going to communicate with your child? So it's really, really up to you to be able to learn the sign. Now another thing for your child would be their education choice. There are three kind of main education choices for your child, which would be a residential school that you can send them to, and you can send them to any type of school that will house them, and then there will be certain schools for deaf children or blind children who need a specific type of schooling, and that's what those schools will offer you. There's also mainstream schools where your child can go and join regular classes with an interpreter. However, if they're not as involved with sign language, then it's going to be very hard for your child to be able to follow. Also, sometimes you miss something with an interpreter has to go kind of quickly, so that may not work out. Also, deaf day school, usually those are pretty expensive, and they're very rarely found. So that also is kind of a lesser option. So the option I went with was residential schools, and residential schools is a good option in my opinion, because yes, overall it can be a little bit expensive. It can range from the 30,000s to 50,000s, but it's really worth it for your child, because they get to go and they get to express their feelings with other deaf people who know what they're going through, and teachers who know what they're going through. And also they'll be having good deaf role models around them, and they'll be having people who care about what their feelings are, and how they and who know what their feelings are. And that's really important for the child, because they feel like as a child you need to be accepted, and that's one really big thing for them. So if you're around a bunch of other kids who are hearing and you are deaf, they're not going to understand, and they're not going to be able to communicate with you as well, and your child might feel isolated. So that's why a residential school would be a very good option for your child, because then they'll be able to communicate and become friends with other people who are like them. One schooling option near me would be the Virginia School for the Deaf and Blind. It's a very nice school. It's beautiful. I'll leave a description down, and I'll leave a link in the description down for you guys, so that you can click on that and go to that website and find out some of the information about that if you're looking into that. So yeah, so that was my choice of schooling. And then the last thing I'm going to cover is deaf culture. Some of the stuff, I think that's a really, really big part of the for deaf people, is that their culture is very important to them, because there are when you have a deaf culture, usually they're very it's a communicative culture, and instead of a singular culture where people are individualistic and they want to be on their own and live their own life. Instead, in deaf culture, they care for each other. They try to be a whole as as a deaf community. Like coming up soon, in which you can find on another link that I'll drop down in the description at the Gallaudet website. They have some events going on actually just in my area, and all I had to do was go online and search up deaf events. And so coming up just Friday, there's Friday, March 18th, there's an ASL and deaf social going on. So that's just one option that you can do to take your child and yourself and become more involved in the deaf community, maybe learn some sign. There's also a bunch of sign classes on the website, which you'll also see if you go to the website that I link. Like on Saturday, there's also a Saturday silent chat, which you can go to, and that's a really good option, because then you can go and you can talk, and just like on Friday. So yeah, and that's one way that you can keep your child involved, and that's really important to keep your child involved, because if they're not involved, they could get isolated, like I said, and that would be really bad, because then they start shutting down and shutting themselves out, and you wouldn't want that. So yeah, and then you can also fit in yourself, and that's really big. I think you should also be able to discuss and express the way you feel with other people who are going through the same thing you are. And they know exactly how it is, and if also that goes back to learning ASL. If you learn ASL, then you can also talk to other deaf parents who have lived with their deaf child and know what exactly they're doing, and you can also be able to get involved that way. Yeah, and also just having your child around other deaf kids, that's a really good option, because that'll show them that those deaf kids were able to persevere even though they were deaf, and and they don't see it as a disability, as maybe if you were to look at that way. They see it as a part of them that they have accepted and they are now living with, and that's who they are. They are deaf, and they are deaf and proud, and that is something that you can be very proud of, and that is something you should be proud of. Is even though your child is deaf, it is not something to be sad about. It's something that you will just embrace, and now you will be a part of the deaf community, and I will bet you they will accept you with open arms, because that is what they do. And I hope that this was informative to you, and I hope that you use this information to become or to make yourself better, and to figure out what you want to do with your life and with your deaf child. And I hope that everything goes well. Thank you.